I'm Doug Daugherty, President of Hamilton Flourishing, and we're so glad you've joined us today for another conversation with a candidate for the March 2nd City of Chattanooga elections. Today we're talking to Leanne Jones, who's running for District 5 in Chattanooga. And Leanne's a lifelong native of Chattanooga, and we're going to let her talk about herself. Let me tell you just a few things real quick. The election is March 2nd. Voter registration, if you're not registered to vote in the city of Chattanooga, ends Monday, February the 1st. So you got about 3 weeks to do that. A lot of churches are going to be doing voter registration over the next several weeks, so keep an eye out for that. Early voting will begin February the 10th, so that's just a little over, from this interview, a little over a month away, and ends on February the 25th. So keep those dates in mind, but the important date is March 2nd. And we're going to be putting up on the screen ways you can contact Leanne and learn more about her. You can also go to our website, hamiltonflourishing.org, where we've got a picture of Leanne and connected to her website, and you can read about her there. Or you'll be seeing on the screen in a while the address to her website, is her email, and her phone number. But Leanne, we're so glad you could be here today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little about yourself. Where were you born? When did you come to this area? I think you told me you've been here all your life. Are you married? Have children? Where'd you go to school? Those kind of questions.
Of course, but I do want to sincerely thank you for this opportunity.
Well, you're welcome.
But my name is Leanne Jones. I'm 30 years of age. I am not married, and I do not have any children. Some people sometimes see that to be a shock, but my parents, I believe they have enough grandchildren for now.
Okay.
But I graduated from Brainerd High School, which is in District 5 as well.
Okay.
And I am also still currently in school studying for Christian and Family Individual Counseling to receive my bachelor's degree in that.
Where are you doing that?
Liberty University online.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But I have been a lifelong District 5 resident, born and raised here in Chattanooga, lived here my entire life, been to church here my entire life.
And you told me your dad is a pastor.
He is a pastor, yes.
And you're in the choir there?
Yes, sir.
What church is that?
Faith United Baptist Church.
Faith United Baptist Church. And tell me something about how do you like to spend your free time?
I like to spend my free time doing things other than church business or political issues. I like to spend time with my nieces. I love to read. And I most certainly love to sing in my free time. Even though I sing with my church choir, singing is something that's always been a passion of mine.
Wow, that's great. What's a good book you've read lately?
The latest book series that I have been reading, it's based on a Netflix show that just came out called Bridgerton, and it's by Leanne Quinn. She wrote a series of 10 books about British life and the kings and queens and how they lived their lives, and so I just started reading the first book of that series.
Yeah.
So it's really a good book.
That's great. Now you're running for District 5.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit more about this district in detail. What precincts, or can you describe it physically to us?
Yeah. If you really have a hard time with understanding names or remembering names of streets, I can give you some pinpoints as to where District 5 may start and end.
Okay.
On Brainerd Road, right where the Walgreens is, all the way up to the cutoff is Lee Highway. Once Brainerd Road turns to Lee Highway, that's where District 5 kind of cuts off before it turns into District 6. And then it kind of goes at an angle back towards Highway 58. And so Highway 58 is right there where Jersey Pike goes off and you enter to Highway 58, and then right where Battery Heights is once you're coming across the back way. So the way that the lines are drawn, there's kind of a motion going like this. Right. And so it can be kind of hard to pinpoint where District 5 ends or begins. But neighborhoods that are included in District 5 is Brainerd, Woodmore, Kings Point 1 and 2, Lakeside, and
Bonnie Oaks.
Bonnie Oaks. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And how can people find out if they're in your district? Do you know how that works?
Yes, actually on my website, if you visit my website, there is a link that you can click and it will take you to a page on the City of Chattanooga government page, and you input your address into the search bar and you search and it'll tell you which district you live in. Now it won't allow you to zoom in close enough to see your house, but what it does, it has it color coded for each district. And so once you put your address in, District 5 shows up orange, and I believe District 7 may show up green. So if that color pops up, and it'll have the city council person's name pop up and tell you which person is over that district and which district that's in.
Leanne, why do you believe you would make a good council member?
Well, I believe I would make a good council person because, for one, I am not what you would consider to be a polished politician. Politics has always been interesting to me, but when we understand that we have a job to do and that's on the behalf of the people, regardless if we have different views or if we all believe certain different things, understanding how it's important to fight for every individual, regardless if they believe certain things or not, understanding that is what really makes me believe that I could be a wonderful council person, because I understand people need help. People need someone to listen to them. People need someone to understand, hey, she may know exactly how I feel because she's been here before, or she's known what it's like to live in certain parts of the city and know what it's like to experience certain things in life. So that, I believe, is what would make me a good council person.
Okay. And anything else that sort of prepared you for this kind of work?
Church.
Sure.
And I say that with a very thin line, because one thing about it is church politics and governmental or local politics, they differ very little. Being a part of the church industry and growing up in church, I learned how to deal with people that may not like me. I learned how to deal with people that may end up saying certain things about me that are not true, even though that's not happened, but I've seen it happen. And so that's given me a bird's eye view as to how to handle political issues, especially in our local city.
Good answer. What do you regard, Leanne, as one or more of your signal achievements with your life? What are something you should look back and say, I hit a home run?
Oh, well, I like to consider everything that I've done to be I hit a home run. Even my failures, even the fact that I dropped out of college my second year, in my sophomore year at Tennessee State University, even the fact that I had to come home due to financial issues. I consider that to be well, you did that, even though it may not have panned out the way I wanted it to, but understanding that it's all a part of my journey. And so even going to college, being accepted to college was a home run. Being able to travel the world singing while I was in high school, that was an accomplishment for me. Winning awards while I was in high school singing, an accomplishment. So
I'm tempted to ask you to break out in song, but I'll refrain.
If we have enough time at the end of the interview, I just might do that.
Okay. This is a little more philosophical question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the proper role of city government? Is it more hands-off or is it more hands-on? It's
more hands-on, in my opinion, because when we look at how our government and even when it comes to federal government and state government, city government is closer. You can reach city government quicker than you can state government. And so I do feel as though city government is hands-on, and we have a responsibility to walk the streets and talk to the people and get an idea as to what's really taking place in our city.
Okay, thank you. What are the top 3 to 5 issues for you in this election? And I may ask you to elaborate if I don't understand.
Sure.
So the top 3 to 5 issues for you in this election?
Yeah, top 3 to 5 issues. One is the fight for 15 for city government workers.
Fight for what?
$15 an hour.
Oh, $15 an hour.
Yes, for our local city workers. We want to make sure that they are paid adequately. Just like I stated a minute ago, city government is important. So if we understand how important city government is, we know that people are working for our city, but they're not working and receiving adequate wages. So
what's the current pay for city workers?
It differs. It differs on department. It differs on what the worker may do. Now I know for like city workers that pick up trash or recycle, they're only making about $9 an hour.
Okay.
I do know a couple weeks ago there were the fire chief came to city council to talk about raising the base pay for firefighters, and the base pay for firefighters was around 33 and some change a year. And when they, based on the hours that firefighters work, when they did the math, it came down to $10.92 an hour for our firefighters. So these are some things that we should really relook at and think about. Another issue for me is adequate and affordable housing. And we have seen over the past 5 to 7 years, multiple complexes go up around the city, but not where it matters the most. District 5, out of all of the districts, has not seen adequate housing being built. And I can say the same for District 8 or District 7. And we have a responsibility to make sure that the residents that live in these districts have somewhere to live, and they're not paying their whole paycheck just for rent. You know, they may have a car note, gas, all of the other things that it takes to live. So adequate and affordable housing is another issue. And my final, I'll give this final issue, is not fully police reform, but making sure we hold our police officers accountable. We should really take a moment to look at how the complaints come in for officers, if they are being adequately addressed, if police officers are in the wrong, are they being held accountable? And so really taking the time to look at how any review committee handles these complaints against our police officers. We want to make sure we do justice for the community, as well as if a police officer is, being lied on, we want to make sure that officer gets the same justice.
Okay. Now, first day, first meeting for you, what's going to be, you've listed 3 things that you think are top issues in the election. Will one of these be your first priority, or is there something else that you're going to be, say, really going to work on this first?
That's a twofold response for me. I understand that I am only one vote on city council.
Right.
So there may be 2 or 3 other council people that have an issue that they want to address. And we take it before the council, talk about it, and see how that goes. And so I would not necessarily go along, but just see what it is that they're talking about. And if that's something that I can agree with, then we can move forward with that issue. But the top issue for me is the $15 for city government workers.
Okay. Do you support, Leanne, some kind of increase in taxes for the city? Have you thought about this?
I have thought about it, and when it comes to increasing taxes, it's a lot that goes into it, because if you're increasing taxes on someone that makes $22,000 a year, what are they going to have to bring home? If you're increasing taxes on someone that doesn't even have a job, how are they going to pay their taxes? So it's a matter of looking and seeing exactly what the taxes will be going towards, if it will be for schools, if it will be for infrastructure, things of that nature. But that's something I most certainly want to sit down and discuss and look at the details about. And if needed, if a tax increase is needed for a certain portion of individuals or the city in general, then whatever is best for the community is what I would go towards.
Thank you. Leanne, what can you see, what can the city do the city has been great about economic growth over the last 20 years. What can the city do to continue to see our economy grow and grow more jobs in the Chattanooga area? Now, let's assume that COVID has somehow gone past and we're post-COVID.
Right.
What can we do to grow our economy, get more jobs for people, and get people ready for the jobs that are out there?
Right. One thing that we can do is we have to start with our children. Because children are not forever going to be children. They grow up to become adults. And those adults will then become working citizens, a part of the society. So I believe if we start earlier teaching our children the importance of financial education, teaching them the importance of making sure they have a skill that can work for them for their entire life, that alone would begin to increase the economic base in the city of Chattanooga. But I am all for bringing jobs, adequate jobs, to the city, and not just, jobs that come and then they go, or they come because they've, made a deal with someone and they said, hey, we'll cut all your taxes just for you to come. But how does that better the people, the working class of this city?
Yeah. Great. Now, let me ask you, this has changed up just a little bit.
Sure.
What is the proper role of government in the life of families? A lot of people, there's a lot of issues that people say, this really starts at home. It's not really, so do you have a philosophy on the issue, on the question of how local government relates to family and what goes on in families and parenting and single parenting and just the whole issues of family functioning and integrity and wholeness?
Absolutely. Since I was young, my dad has always said this: there are 3 components that matter to a child, and if any one of these components are lacking, that child may end up missing something as an adult, and that is home, that is church, and that is school. Now, not in any part of that did he say government, and I feel as though I could elaborate on that, because sometimes we have to understand that the government does not necessarily owe us anything. The government is here to take care of governmental business. And so as people located in our city and cities across the country, we have a responsibility to take care of each other. We can't fully put the responsibility on the back of the government, or we can't fully put the responsibility back on the church, but it's a multifaceted effort. And so if we see that there is not much activeness coming from the church, then there's going to be a great activeness going towards the government, and vice versa. So it is our responsibility to work together in that issue. I've noticed that once the government does get involved too much, it controls how a household works. I know personally of a lot of people who have more than 2 children, and they work decent paying jobs, but in order for them to get some type of help, especially during COVID, they have to find ways to work through the system just to get a little help, not to get handouts so they can sit at home and do nothing, but just to get a little help. So I know that government plays a big part, but in regards to the family dynamic, government can sometimes dictate that, and once they do, it kind of tears apart the family.
Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Do you see a role for churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples and local government? I know that there can't be a legal thing, but you all have a lot of influence in terms of having a bully pulpit and channeling things. You can even create partnerships that.
Right.
So, I mean, do you see there is a role for the faith community?
Absolutely. Because regardless of what faith anyone believes, I can sincerely say in my years of study, one of the basic rules that we all understand is called the golden rule. Treat others how you would want to be treated. And so for each individual that is a part of a faith community, there should be some type of, hey, let's get in the community and fix this. Let's get in the community and put some work in. But one thing that I've noticed and I've realized is a lot of churches or a lot of people that are a part of the faith community fail to do that because they feel, well, if I get too involved, then the government may say, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So they just refuse to do anything. I get that, but we have too much of a great responsibility to just sit aside and not do anything. So yes, there is a place for faith-based communities.
Now we're going to jump into some more difficult questions. Are you pro-life or are you pro-choice, or do you want to elaborate on that?
I would most certainly like to elaborate on that.
Okay.
Actually, I was on Facebook a couple of days ago, and I can't remember his name to save my life, but there was a pastor who lives in Georgia, and he was just on talking about the current election that happened in Georgia and saying, well, for me, these were the words he was saying, for me, I can't support anybody that is not pro-life. And if you consider yourself to be a pastor, then you shouldn't be pro-life. And
shouldn't be or should be?
He said you shouldn't be.
You shouldn't, no.
Exactly. So for me, we have to understand, and I'm talking to those that believe in Jesus Christ at this point. Jesus came for one reason and one reason only, and that was to save the world from the sin that keeps us bound, and sin that is a detriment to us. So when he did that, we now have a straight away to him to ask him for forgiveness in any sin that we commit. Sometimes as faith-based communities, we can be so condemning and so judgmental where we forget that we once had to ask someone to forgive us, right? So am I pro-choice? I am, because I can't force anybody to make a decision. Christ did not force me to accept him. That was my own personal decision. I'm pro-choice for those who need that option. But for me in my household, I'm pro-life. If that incident were to come up, I would not make the decision to go in and have an abortion because it happened for a reason. But for someone else, that may not be the situation that they need to take.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there's been a lot of language thrown around in our community under the Burke administration specifically about systemic white racism. And I just wonder what your read on that is. I mean, just respond to that. I mean,
Yeah.
is that, just talk about it.
Yeah, so in my study and in my research and understanding the way the city of Chattanooga operates, there are a lot of people that benefit from white supremacy and systemic racism. We have to understand that this stems back centuries, and knowing how sometimes individuals would, they would do certain things to keep certain people away. If it's African Americans or Hispanics or Asians, if they didn't look like them, they were not going to give them an opportunity. And so for so long that happened, that kept a certain group of people away from opportunities, and not just opportunities to prove themselves, but just opportunities to do something. I think everybody deserves an opportunity, but sometimes that option is not there. So if I don't have an opportunity, how can I show you I can do something? And so we see that a lot in the city of Chattanooga specifically. And do I agree with it? I do not. Do I believe it can change? I do.
Okay, fair enough. Now this is another tough question.
Sure.
But how do you understand the concept of equity working in your role as an elected leader? You get elected to Council District 5. That word has a lot of influence on a lot of stuff now, depending on how you understand it. So what I'm really exploring is, how do you understand the notion of equity, and how would you see it playing out in your role as someone who's actually going to be a voice in passing laws and things like that?
Right. So sometimes people get equity and equality mixed up. Equality is where we should all be treated fairly.
Right.
Equity more so has to do with the economic base of it. So if you say I'm equal by giving me a job that would only be given to someone, a Caucasian female, but you turn around and then allow me, an African American female, the opportunity to work in the same position, but you still pay this Caucasian female more than you pay me.
Yep.
But we just came into the position at the same time. That is what equity looks like.
Okay.
Equity is making sure each and every individual is able to receive what they should.
Okay.
In any facet of life, whether it be in government or whether it be in the arts or however, is just making sure that each individual has the opportunity to receive the same pay that they need.
So you see equity mostly in economic terms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you believe the previous city administration and the current county and state administration has handled the response to COVID-19 well, or could it have improved upon it? If so, how? What could have been done?
Well, for me, seeing as how I have been a part of operating a church during the midst of this pandemic, I understand that everyone who is alive during this pandemic has never been a part of one before. And so everybody is doing what they think is best, because they've never had to work in a pandemic before. They've never had to make tough decisions in a pandemic before. So do I believe they're doing their absolute best? I do. We learn from trial and error. We see if we make something or say something and we see that wasn't the best, we should be willing to go back and fix it. But do I believe that they operated in the best in the beginning of the pandemic? I do. Do I think that some maybe mask mandates or something could have slowed down the exposure of this virus? I sincerely do, because now in the state of Tennessee, Hamilton County is number 4 on the cases that we have had since the beginning of this pandemic. And so the numbers are going up. So government should be willing to do something to kind of control that or start to control that.
Okay. Some tough questions. What's your position on the Second Amendment? Can you explain?
Yeah, the Second Amendment, you're able to bear your arms. You're able to protect yourself. Do I believe in that? I do. Do I have a gun? I don't. Mainly because I've always been weary of those things. I've never liked to see guns. I've never liked to be around them. That's just a personal thing. But I do believe in one's ability and right to bear arms.
Okay. And while I'm on that question, Chattanooga seems, and according to the FBI statistics, we're one of the most violent cities in the country. It's hard to believe. We don't talk about it much because it's bad PR for the tourists, but we are. How will you approach the whole problem of shootings in Chattanooga? There seems like there's hardly a week that goes by where 2, 3, 4 people aren't shot randomly. Right. It's really not a policing issue. At least I don't read it as a policing issue. It's something else that makes people, I mean, they can't get there in time to stop a bullet.
Right.
So, I mean, what is your view on that? Because I think it's a big deal, especially as we're a tourist town.
It is. It is a big deal. And it's more than just because we're a tourist town, but it's because we're a city in general. We have people that live here, and people should be able to live somewhere in peace.
Yes.
Understanding that for every action there is an opposite but reactive action. And so what I mean by that is we have to be willing to look at the cause of these shootings. Why are individuals going out shooting? What are some of the things that they're experiencing that causes them to act out? Because we know that if just basic human study, if someone is dealing with something, they're going to go and find something that alleviates the problems that they're facing. So we understand that we should be willing to put other things into the hands of those that are taking up these guns and causing these meaningless shootings. So we should be willing to work more into getting our young children involved, finding ways to get them involved in church, whether it be church or not, finding ways to get them into the arts, keeping them busy, because if they have such idle time, they have time to go and get into all types of mischief.
You would know this. This is totally off script.
Yeah.
Is there not anybody who recruits young people to use their musical skills in more than just a private way? I mean, is there any program in Chattanooga that somebody like you who's got the skills could say, hey, I want to start a boys choir or something?
Right. We do have, there are a lot of organizations in the city, but unfortunately, everybody does not have access to those. And one thing that I've noticed, I graduated from Brainerd High School in 2009. And my love for music grew under my choir teacher, Mr. Charles Collins. And so once funds were being funneled away from the music department, you started to see the children being less and less active. Once the arts were taken out of school, then you started to see how things began to take a negative turn. And so it's important for us to focus on our arts, because this is what keeps our children active.
That's actually a good argument.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the city is doing enough to help disabled and mentally ill people and the chronically poor? And what is your philosophy on the role in such things?
Yeah, we can always ask if one is doing enough. I believe that the city is doing just what the city knows how to do. I sincerely appreciate the brand new mental health hospital that they built on Holtzclaw. But since they built it, and maybe that just might be an overlook on my part, but I haven't really heard anything in regards to how it's operating or how it's going. But I do believe that they could do more. We have to understand the seriousness behind mental illness, and mental illness comes from sometimes being poor. If you're poor, you sometimes are anxious about exactly how you're going to pay your bills. And then if you're anxious about that, you then in return go pick up other things that causes bad habits. And so I believe the city has a responsibility to create programs that not only that not just pacifies people, but teaches them how to overcome these struggles. And so long we've seen organizations that just give handouts and that just pacify people, but we're not teaching people what it means to be a law-abiding, active citizen.
I wonder if they have 12-step programs in the recreation centers around the city. I mean, they've got, how many of them, 12, 15 or something like that?
Somewhere around in there. But
Yeah.
there are two actually in District 5, one in Brainerd and one in Washington Hills.
I think that would be a great place to have a 12-step program.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and it does to me anyway. What will you advocate for the need of affordable housing within the city?
What will I advocate?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing about what I will advocate for is we need to do our best to acquire, affordable housing. If that means we find investors, or even if that means, like one of the questions you asked me earlier about tax increases, if that means we have to increase taxes so that way we can afford or build affordable housings here in the city, then that's something that we should look into.
Right.
But however we need to go about looking and researching and seeing what would be the best option, that is what I would be willing to do, because affordable housing is sincerely needed.
Well, that's all our questions, Leanne. Let me ask you, any last words, any closing thoughts that you'd like to have?
Absolutely not. I appreciate spending this time talking with you.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, now, again, we've been talking to Leanne Jones, who's running for City Council in District 5. That's Eastgate, Woodmore, Dalewood, Kings Point 1 and 2, Lake Hills, Bonnie Oaks. If you're in those districts, this is one of your choices. If you're not registered to vote, you've got to February the 1st to do that. And if you're over 60 or 65?
65.
65, you can write in and get a vote by mail thing. And then on the screen, there is, you can get in touch with Leanne at that phone number, and that is your website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
And there is, that's the district Leanne is in. So, Leanne, thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for having me.
People want to encourage people to get in touch with you. If Leanne has said something that sparked you and you said, I'd like to work for that lady, then give her a call and be a volunteer. I'm sure a volunteer would be a big help.
Yes, a huge help.
Okay. Leanne, thank you. And thank you for watching today, Hamilton Flourishing.